So Dr. Tricia, I guess I was saying I met her about a year and 3 or 4 months ago, to be specific. She is, first of all, is amazing in just the way she kind of explains her craft and the passion she has for her craft, and I think it'll come off very clearly just in a few minutes. But the biggest thing she's done for me and for many of friends and different people I know, just leveraging her specialty to minimize stress and through optimization of sleep, breath work, the new sexy discussion, cold therapy and sauna therapy has become very I'm sure throughout the country, especially in New York. I think for a lot of us are in the real estate community, and for real estate professionals, our schedules and our jobs, while everybody talks about balance, we're often, at the mercy of our clients, the mercy of deals. Right now the market is a little slow, which makes people nervous, right? And they, they're more anxious. And then when the market's busy, we're running around crazy. So it's like, how do you find, for me personally, how do I find, everybody uses the word balance, but consistency, through good times and stressful times, right? So I've personally used a lot of Dr. Tricia's tools to create, consistency. And it's one of those things where, you go into like a cold plunge every day and, you're thinking to yourself, is this working? Is this working? Like, what's happening? And then after, 3 months, 6 months, it's a slow drip. You start to, see differences, for me, to be personal, even the way I interact with my family, at work, with my kids, when there's a stressful situation. So, anybody's familiar with Wim Hof, Dr. Tricia is, one of the leading experts in teaching Wim Hof. She spent a lot of time with him. She's, you can definitely check her out on YouTube, some of the different, breath work and meditation after this. It's phenomenal. But I'll let you give, I guess, your little background as well. I want to make sure I don't miss anything. And then we'll jump into some Q&A.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for having me. Thanks for putting this together. This is amazing, amazing opportunity for everyone. Our health is everything. Without our health, we have nothing, right? We can't serve our clients. We can't serve our families. So health has got to be number one. It's just a non-negotiable. It's part of your job to take care of yourself and your health. And my mission in life is to empower people in their own health. My background, I was a sports chiropractor for years. I had a practice in Los Angeles, and I could never just look at, a knee, a hip, a shoulder, a back, because I always ask, well, what's your sleep like, right? What's your stress management like? Because all those things have an impact on an injury. And breathing was something I always did with my patients and athletes. Breathing is becoming, of course, much more popular now and mainstream. But it's the greatest human performance enhancing tool at our fingertips. So I truly believe between breathing, cold and hot, and sleep, really, those are your biggest returns on investment for your health. And the simplest things, they're not easy, but they're simple, right? And some of them are free. Wim always jokes that, so Wim Hof, just quickly, he has basically a practice, breathing exercises, mindset, and cold exposure. He was kind of the first one that came on the scene that was getting, people in ice baths. And really it's because there's research behind him, right? So they did a research project, and they showed that we can, in fact, voluntarily influence our nervous system and our immune system, which they never thought before was possible, right? So Wim came on the scene because of this research, and he now it's all mainstream, right? It's things that of course we've been doing for thousands of years, but now when there's research behind it, people, start understanding how it really impacts us. So when I started doing Wim Hof, an ice bath changed my life. An ice bath allowed me to stand on stage in front of thousands of people in Sydney, Australia, allows me to talk on this Zoom with all of you today, and just allowed me to put fear into perspective. Fear and stress are simply just primal responses that keep us alive, right? But if you think about it, all they do is mobilize these resources for us to do something. A lot of times to do something that we never thought was possible before. So
a good starting point is the breath work, right? That's kind of your foundation, and then it built to the cold therapy and the sauna.
yeah, I mean, just because breathing was one of the first things I was doing with patients, and then I heard about Wim and the research, and it truly is. Breathing is our one direct line to our nervous system. So you can increase your heart rate and you can decrease your heart rate simply by the way you breathe.
And with the cold plunge, I mean, it's all breath work in the cold plunge. The sauna, I guess, can be a little different. You can still practice breath work, of course, but you really want to be intentional with the cold plunge. I've found, especially when it gets very cold.
Yeah, I mean, truly, that if you want to know the secret to an ice bath, it's a long exhale. That's the whole, like, you don't need to know anything else about an ice bath, about how to get through it, all of these things. It's simply a long exhale, because when we exhale, our heart rate decreases.
Right.
When we inhale, our heart rate increases, right? So if you're, kind of breathing like this, or have these short breaths and they're very fast kind of throughout the day, right? We're increasing our heart rate. Can be good, but also we don't want to waste our energy there all the time. If we focus on our exhales, slow our breathing down, then it decreases our heart rate. So it's the most powerful tool that we have that can calm you down.
Yeah, just to put things in perspective for everybody, I think the first time I met Dr. Trish in person, we were in Wisconsin in the middle of the winter. They carved a hole in the middle of a huge lake, 2 feet of ice. And it was before I had a cold plunge, before I did ice baths at home. I think maybe the week before I was like, oh crap, I'm going to this place. I better start to practice a little bit. So imagine the first time you're in the middle of the winter, literally there's ice crystals forming around you while you're in the water. And thankfully, Dr. Trish was staring us all in the face and helping us breathe, because but for that, you can imagine how overwhelming it is. It's substantially colder than, or relatively colder than most, cold plunges, and it's amazing how you can't really physically prepare for it. So mentally you have to prepare for it, right? Because your body's going to go through some sort of, I guess, how do you describe it?
Adrenaline. You're going to go through with your heart rate increasing, your breath being taken away, right? And it's cold. It's going to be cold even when you train all the time, right? Which is great, because we get that initial shock. And then we can breathe and calm ourselves down.
So I guess what are the general, let's go like the general basic, benefits of the breath work, the cold plunge, even the sauna, that, everybody should know about. And I guess we can, build from there.
Yeah. So I would say number one thing with the breath, like I said, it's direct line to your nervous system. So the quickest way we know how to decrease our heart rate is a double inhale. So if everyone does it, what I want you to do is I want you to breathe in through the nose, and then I want you to stack another inhale on top, and then I want you to open the mouth and relaxed exhale out. Good. Inhale through the nose, stack another inhale on top, and a relaxed exhale. Notice how quickly just 2 breaths, how you can bring your heart rate down, right? So all of you have very high stress, right? Lives, very high performing lives, which is great, right? We want this, we want the highs, but we need some recovery. We need ups and downs. We can't just hang out here all the time, right? We want some lows, some recovery, just like that quick breath. So now if I work my extremes of my nervous system, of my stress, I become much more adaptable in between, right? So use that breath when you need it, when you feel you're getting upset, when you have to have a hard conversation before you go in to talk to somebody, if you just need a quick transition before you go home, right? Use that breath. Double inhale, relax the exhale, right? So that's the number one thing with the breathing that I can tell you. Cold benefits. I mean, you're going to work out your thermoregulatory system, your metabolism. You're going to work out your cardiovascular system. So literally your blood vessels are going through this opening and closing and getting a nice workout. We talked about adrenaline. Adrenaline actually helps decrease inflammation. So adrenaline is actually healthy. We're going to get some feel-good hormones like dopamine, enhance our immune response. So we have all of these amazing physiological benefits, right? But then we also have character benefits, like looking at the ice bath as a mirror for our life, right? How do we show up in stressful situations, in fearful situations? And then doing those hard things when we don't want to do them, right? That carries over into our life to make our life much easier.
Yeah, it's amazing how some days the cold doesn't feel that cold, and other days it's, it feels dramatically colder, and you're petrified to go in, and some days you just hop in, and it's a lot of mental give and take.
Yeah, but there's never a time, I bet, when you got out that you were
Right.
like, dang, I wish I would have never done that.
Right, for sure.
Right. I mean, there's never a time. It's just like anything else you do in life that, you're like, oh, I don't want to do it. And then you do it. And then, it always turns out great. So it's just an amazing tool for building stress resilience, teaching your body that again. So you just become more adapted to be able to deal with the stresses of daily life and how your body responds. The best quote I like that kind of summarizes cold exposure is, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom, right? So we have a stimulus, the cold. And then if we learn how to take a breath and allow some space, we can respond instead of react, right? We do a lot of reacting through our day. And if we could just create a little bit of space with even just one breath, with a double inhale, relaxed exhale, we can respond much better, which serves us a lot in our lives, right? Responding versus reacting. So that kind of summarizes the cold.
What's, I guess, a good way to get started? And for those that are with the breath work and the cold, hop on YouTube and is it kind of, I imagine, more consistent, the better. It's building that muscle.
Cold showers, you can always start with. Do your regular warm shower. It's funny, I had a wife that was like worried because her husband was taking just cold showers. So she's like, I don't think he's getting clean enough.
Right.
I'm like, okay, take your warm shower, right? Shampoo, all that stuff, and then turn it cold at the end. And to start out, just turn it a little cooler, right? It doesn't have to be full blown cold. And then all I want you to focus on, I want you to start with 3 breaths. So don't worry about how long you're in there. I want you to just lengthen out your exhales. So it's going to be long exhales and 3 breaths. It's a great place to start, right? Then you can turn it colder and colder. And then you can increase the number of breaths, right? And just make it a practice. But especially when you do it in the morning, it helps you wake you up. It helps increase your body temperature, which helps wake you up. So it's a great tool to use first thing in the morning.
And I found sometimes the shower is more difficult than, jumping into a bath because the water is, moving, right? And it's hitting different spots or your top of your head, which is more sensitive. So it's definitely, I haven't done that in a while, but it was challenging, the shower.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think the showers, and you don't have to put it on your head at first. That's something you can, graduate into, but it is much harder because there's new spots hitting you. And then I'm like, okay, I got it on my front. Now I got to flip around. But every time I'm like, I got to flip around, right? That's another thing. I'm like, okay, I'm choosing to do this hard thing every time. And then when you get in an ice bath, which great, when you don't move, you get this warm little coating around the body, right? Because that's one way the body keeps itself warm when you're in the cold. So start with a shower. Andrew was telling me about a bunch of these, there are the old fashioned like Russian bathhouses with the saunas and the cold plunges. And now they're coming out with all of these beautiful facilities with saunas and cold plunges. So after you do a couple cold showers and you see how your body responds, then, and when you learn, kind of train that breath a little bit, then you can go into the ice bath.
Jeff asked a good question. Everybody has got a different, I guess there's different, workout methods, right? Whether, if you're running, is it, should you do a cold plunge before or after you run? If you lift weights, in the morning, should you do this before or after? Because I think I've heard, lifting weights and cold plunge may, affect muscle. If you're trying to build muscle, it may impact there. I don't, so I guess different exercises, they're different methodology.
Yes, and that's the thing about the cold, right? It's always context dependent, just with anything, right? It's like, what do I want my outcome to be? So as far as recovery with exercise, if your main purpose of, let's say, doing strength training is to increase the size of your muscles, then you're going to want to wait. They used to say 45 minutes. Now they're saying like 4 to 5 hours afterwards to do your ice. Or you could do it before, right? But you don't want to do it right after you work out because you want that inflammation. That inflammation serves a purpose to grow your musculature, right? But running, they found, for endurance specifically, they found if you go in afterwards, you're going to improve your endurance because you're recovering faster. So you can do more often, right? So it depends if it's like a skill, if, it's endurance, then you can go in right afterwards.
Okay. How about the sauna therapy? Same idea. And I guess, getting back to the cold plunge, it's the kind of thing you can do daily. How long? What's a good amount of time? What's too much?
Yeah. Well, just like anything, there can always be too much, which always happens with this stuff, right? Now you see everyone like, oh, I want to go like 20 minutes in the ice bath. And to me, that's not advanced. Advancement is never linear, right? I'm never going to be able to be in an ice bath for 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 2 days. It's never going to be like that, right? And every day, right, Andrew, is different. Like you said, every day is different. So it depends on what you want to train, but specifically what we have research on is if you want to increase your metabolism, right? Maybe get a little bit leaner, have your body work a little bit more efficiently, 11 minutes over the week. So just 2 to 3 minute sessions. So 2 minutes is where you want to start in an ice bath, right? 2 minutes max. But 11 minutes spread over the week, they found that it can help boost your metabolism. It's pretty good. And if I want to, say, work on training my stress resilience, I maybe don't want to go in every single day, because if you go in every single day, your body is going to adapt, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you do the same thing, the same
Yeah, I was
amount of
away for
time.
a week and I went back in and it felt a lot colder than normal, you know?
Right? That's what you want. So you actually want to
Right.
go in maybe, 3 or 4 times a week. So that way you get, your body doesn't get too
Oh, that's
adapted.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good to
And
know.
yeah, cold. So the colder, the less time you have to spend in there, but you can't really give a certain temperature because everyone is cold adapted differently, right? So what they say is uncomfortably cold. Like if you get in, you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to die, but this is really uncomfortable. 11 minutes of that over the week.
Yeah, over the week, Lena. So,
Yes.
what is like 3 minutes at a time, give or take?
Yep. 3 minutes is really the sweet spot. 2 to 3 minutes is where all the benefits are in the ice bath.
So
You
it
know,
will work if we do it straight for 11 minutes.
well, you got to build up to it. So if you're going to do, sometimes we'll do 10-minute ice baths, and it's kind of something that we build up to. And it's like, kind of like that 1 rep max at the gym, but it's not something you want to do a lot, right? You only want to do longer times if you want to build your cold endurance. So for example, I live in San Diego. I went to lead Wim Hof instructor training in Poland for 2 weeks, and it's in the winter. So it's freezing. So I had to be, build up some cold endurance so I could be outside, for 2 weeks. So I went in longer and longer. But what we find is, again, 2 to 3 minute sessions is where all the good stuff is.
Got it.
And-
Thank you.
Yeah, in 3 minutes, yeah, we have a few questions. So I guess the benefits of cold shower, I know it's overall, I think what you're saying before, you want to kind of start with the cold shower and lead to a cold plunge, but there are more benefits to a cold plunge. I imagine
It's
it's hitting more parts
yes.
of your body.
Yep.
Cold plunge in group settings. Yeah, I mean, it could be, listen, it's turned into a social thing, right? That's where the fun of it, I guess, that leads into the next question. Any ice bath, we'll answer these questions first. Ice bath recommendations for home use. And there's so many now. I have the plunge, which is great. Chris does also. What other, I've seen a bunch of them.
There's one called Renew, which is really nice. It looks like kind of like a Japanese soaking tub. The problem is that they're just so expensive right now. But as we know, once more people build these things, the technology is going to get cheaper and cheaper. But the plunge is great. Renew is nice. There's some other ones that they're coming up with that are kind of more portable. But if you're really going to commit to it, then get one, because it filters the water, it keeps it cold. So it's going to keep you going and keep you committed more than
the convenience
trying to
of
go
it
get
is like
ice.
filling a tub with ice is hard. It's like, unless you have an ice machine in your house, and buying an ice machine can be pretty expensive. So I guess dovetailing to the sauna, maybe a good segue. A lot of people, especially these days, and we've had like a social interaction of like hopping back and forth, right? I know you've taught me on this. It's not necessarily, it's good to do that, once in a while, but you don't necessarily want to hop back and forth for different reasons. Can you kind of explain that, and then we'll pivot into the sauna therapy?
Yeah. So what we call that is contrast therapy, when you're going cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, hot. It's great. Train it, because what you're doing is, in the cold, your blood vessels are vasoconstricting. So they're narrowing, right? Especially in your limbs. And then in the hot, they're opening up because you have to give off heat. So again, you're getting a nice blood vessel workout when you're doing that. And you're getting that big temperature difference, which is great. So contrast therapy is amazing, especially for cardiovascular issues or just cardiovascular health overall. And I like to train, again, just like I was saying with the cold, if you do the same thing all the time, then your body adapts. So what people do is they go in the cold and then they rush into the hot and then they rush back into the cold, and they're just essentially using an external source to do the work that the body should be doing. And what we want is for the body, especially after you get out of the cold, to have to work to warm itself back up. Right? So you want to take a little pause before you go into the sauna. Then after the sauna, you want to take a little pause, let your body cool down before you get in the cold. Okay? Train that, but also train just cold and just hot. So I say do all three if you can.
Is there a good rule of thumb, like how many days a week? Is it contrast good?
It's hard to say just as many times as, you're going in, but I would say like 2 to 3 for contrast. I mean, if you're going in.
Say you have like access to a plunge and a sauna, and you can, pick you can choose your own adventure, 2-3 days a week of contrast, and then 3-4 days a week, or 2-3 days a week of the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's interesting is with the sauna, the research shows going in, so it's very dose dependent. So going in more often. So in this study specifically, 5 to 7 days a week, they had much better results than going in just once a week. So results as in decreasing cardiovascular or sudden cardiac death, decreasing risk of stroke, decreasing Alzheimer's. So these are some major things that came through in these studies. All these studies were done in Finland because this is just part of their daily life, right? Almost every single person has a sauna in their house. They go in the cold, they go in the hot. So really good research on sauna, especially for cardiovascular health.
Is there, I guess, a general rule of thumb? I know it's dependent on each person. Temperature, I guess, for the cold plunge, a range, and the sauna.
So cold plunge, again, it's hard, uncomfortably cold. Below 50 is pretty good. We'll say, okay, 2 to 3 minutes is a good amount of time. If it's warmer, you just have to stay in a little bit longer, right? You want to get cold with the cold. With the hot, you want to get hot, right? So what the research says for temperature is like 175 to 200. So it's hot. 20 minutes was about the magical time that they found in these studies, was 20 minutes. Now, if you can't stay in 20 minutes when you first go, again, you have to build up and you have to take it slowly to adapt. So always respect, especially heat. Our bodies don't have the same range. Like we can handle a lot more cold than we can heat, right? So respect the heat, gradually increase your times. But they found, again, 175 to 200, and then 20 minutes was the magical time.
There seem to be so many options now with the sauna, right? Dry, steam, the red light. I think the red light's, gaining a lot of attention now. Can you kind of speak on each of them and different opinions and thoughts?
Yeah, one thing just about the cold, because that reminded me of the cryotherapy chambers.
Yeah.
So people always ask about those. Not the same. So air, we conduct heat differently with air and water, right? We give off much more of our heat to water. That's why when you go in a cold immersion, when you go in an ice bath, it's way colder. If you just go in one of those cryo chambers where the air is cold, you might be a little cold while you're in there, but as soon as you get out, you're warm, right? So your body's not really doing any work. And when they first came out with these, they were using nitrogen gas because nitrogen, makes the air cold. they use this to make ice cream very fast, right? Well, then they were discovering people were actually, it was damaging their skin cells. And they were having people go in, you go to these places, they're like, oh, come in 6 times a week. So now most of these cryo chambers have moved to cold air. But again, they're basically trying to use the research from cold baths, from cold immersion. So a lot of the research they're using is not from a cryo chamber. So I say save your money. And a cold shower is much,
Expensive.
yes, a
Those
cold
things.
shower is much better than a cryo chamber. So with saunas, dry sauna with a little bit of the humidity, they find like 10 to 20% of humidity. So where you're pouring the water over the rocks is what most of the research is based on, right? Hot. The problem with infrared saunas are most of them now I know get up to a maximum maybe 140, 145. So you have to stay in much longer, right?
Is that the red light, same thing, infrared red light?
Yeah. And we don't know, they're just starting to come out with some research on, the red light and the infrared. But again, the research is based on hot. So that's what we want.
And then, I guess full steam. So I guess the preference is the dry with a little steam as opposed to full out, steam shower.
Yes. So the steam showers are great. It's just you're going to be in for a much shorter amount of time, right? Because again, it's water. So we're going to give off that heat much quicker.
Right. So I guess
So-
all of this, it's a lot of information. Remember when I was starting, so there's breath work, right? There's sauna, there's, cold therapy. What's like a good way to start? I guess, breath work can be done exclusively, on its own outside of cold therapy and sauna therapy, right? So maybe for, somebody wanting to start, what's like a good entree? There's the Wim Hof and then there's cold plunge and then there's sauna. So what's, pick your favorite or what would you recommend for a beginner?
Well, I would always say put some kind of breath work in. Now, a breath practice doesn't have to look like, laying down, doing Wim Hof method for 20 or 30 minutes. It could just simply be being aware of your breathing throughout your day, right? From what we know, we should be breathing nose only throughout our day, throughout our nights, as much as we can when we're exercising. So just being aware of nose breathing is like the number one breath practice I say anyone can start with, right? And then using that double inhale, relaxed exhale to calm yourself down. So those are the two things with breath work. If you want to really dive into, there's a bunch of protocols you can look at. Box breathing. Does anyone raise their hand if you ever heard of
That's
box
what I do.
breathing?
I do that in the cold plunge.
Yeah.
most
So
part.
box breathing, you inhale for a count, hold, exhale, hold. So essentially you're visualizing drawing a box with your breath. So that's very relaxing. Some people use it to go to sleep. And then Wim Hof method is more if you want like really focused energy, if you're feeling sick, that is a great practice. And there's an app. Wim also has a YouTube with him, going through the breathing practice. So
Yeah, I found even going to sleep now, it's funny, I'll lay in bed and breathe. I'm unfortunately, my mouth breather still haven't crossed over yet, but even just laying down in bed and breathing through my nose, even just like sitting here, it's, you just feel a state of relaxation, which is unbelievable. I guess that's it. So sleep, right? Sleep optimization, many people, suffer from lack of sleep. I guess the breathing, again, it all relates, but anything specific as it relates to sleep and how to kind of work on getting better sleep and what are ideal sleep conditions?
yeah, so sleep, the number one things that pretty much anyone can do. I know it's tough, can be tough in your business because you have some late nights. But consistency is huge. So sleep is really based on our rhythms, specifically our circadian rhythm, which is that rhythm of 24 hours, right? So consistency, same bedtime, same wake time, even on the weekends, which is hard to do, right? But it's funny because we'll stay up, if I stay up, say 3 hours later on a Friday night, I'm doing what's actually called social jet lag. So it's almost like I flew from, San Diego to New York, which who's ever had jet lag is not very fun, right? But for some reason we choose to do that socially on the weekends. And it really messes with our cycles. So the more consistent you are, even on the weekends, will help, because then your body everything's a pattern with our physiology, right? So consistency is number one. If you stay up later, say on a Friday night, I want you to still keep your same wake time Saturday morning. So even though you're like, oh, well, then I'll only get like 5 hours of sleep, that's okay. Because then you're going to keep on your schedule for going to bed Saturday night. And you're not going to completely throw everything off, right? So rhythm, super important. Consistency, getting light, outside light, especially first thing in the morning, very, very important. Light is our most powerful impact on our rhythms. So getting light, they say minimum 10 minutes in the morning. It's a great time to go for a walk, especially now with the weather. So get outside, go for a walk first thing in the morning. And then at night, after sunset, dim your lights. So what's funny is humans, right? When the sun goes down, we all turn our lights up. But we should actually be keeping our lights very dim in our houses, especially getting rid of overhead lights. So if you have lamps, but dim them, and you'll notice, you notice a massive difference how light has an impact on your sleep.
How about the elephant in the room, checking your phone until the second you go to sleep and when you wake up and all of that? I'm sure we all, especially the social media world.
Yes.
I can't imagine that's beneficial for these sleeping patterns. Right.
No.
I don't need to be a doctor to tell you that.
No. And it's funny because everyone's like, oh, well, I'll just wear my blue light blocking glasses and still be on my phone, till 11 o'clock. It's like, well, what about all that, that nervous system, being pinged by all of your social media things that are happening? Like, no. So light in general. And of course, think about that. Like, you want relaxing things to do before you go to sleep, right? And even though you might think, oh yeah, scrolling on social media is decompression, it's not decompression for your nervous system, right? Think about it. Those companies that design this stuff, very, very smart. You can barely get on your phone without going down some rabbit hole, right? So at least have it off. They say an hour, before you go to sleep. Have some kind of ritual. I like the word ritual better than routine, because routines, I feel like, are just things, you're marking off the box.
Great to have you.
But a ritual is something that you have intention and you're doing this as a purpose, right? So doing things that are relaxing in the evening, going for a walk, when the sun's going down after you eat, taking a warm shower, a warm bath, reading of actual book is very relaxing. Doing some breathing is very relaxing, right? We should do all these things. I have a new baby, right? And when we're babies and kids, we have this whole like nighttime, bedtime routine. And then we become adults and we're like, I'm going to work until like 11 o'clock and then I'm going to lay down. And you're like, why am I not going to sleep? Well, no kidding. That's why you're not going to sleep.
Yeah.
You need to relax.
That's so funny. It's so simple and so obvious, right? Yeah. Whether it's an infant or a 5-year-old, like reading a book, right? Instead of being on your phone. So again, babies have it all figured out, whether it's posture and whether they lift things up.
Breathing.
Right.
play,
Right.
imagination,
That makes so much sense.
just be a baby.
So I'm actually gonna put in the chat box, one of Dr. Trish's YouTube videos, but I would definitely recommend everybody check it out. Check out one of her videos because it is an experience. It's like, for many of you, it could be life changing. It's just, it's an enjoyable experience that you'll definitely get something out of it. But wanted to thank you for your time. If anybody has any last minute questions, I just want to be respectful of Dr. Trish's time. Thank you so much for joining us. I know this is a topic so many people are interested in, and it's cool to get some firsthand knowledge from an expert like you. I also included Dr. Trish's website. Dr. Trish does a lot of events, a lot of seminars, a lot of webinars. So whether you're, involved in, corporate companies or, somebody looking to, dig in deeper, with all of this, I'll put our website again and the YouTube, definitely reach out. But I want to thank everybody for joining as my lights go off. Perfect.
Oh, there you go.
All right.
Yeah.
Have a good day, everybody. Get outside in New York. It's beautiful.
Yes, get outside, do a little bit of breathing when you're walking, and just enjoy it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you got it. Thank
All right.
you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.